We're going to get visible again. We're going to get visible learning, and we're going to add some feedback to that coming up next with the Dr. John Hattie.
Oh, Scott, I'm so excited. I don't want to do any of our tips or anything today. Are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah, no, I want as much time with our special guest who's back for his third time. I think he gets a mug or a green jacket.
Well, welcome to the show, Professor John Hattie, Dr. John Hattie. He is the director of the Melbourne Education Research Institute at the University of Melbourne in Australia. He is on Monday and we are on Sunday. And so glad that we could figure out these time zones and actually connect with him.
How does tomorrow look, by the way?
How's the?
All right. It's great to talk to you again, Tim and Scott. Tomorrow is a wonderful day. You'll be pleased to know that it's very sunny. It's time to take the dogs for a walk on the beach. But we got work to do in the meantime.
So
that's right.
In the Belmont Stakes. All right. Well, it's like Back to the Future here.
And Tim, we've had quite a few signups recently for Global School Play Day from New Zealand and Australia. That's coming up February 6th, the first Wednesday in February 2019 this year, but every year, right?
Beautiful. Yeah, that's cool. We got the land down under in there as well. So Professor Hattie, Dr. John Hattie, thank you so much for joining us. And let's just get it started with, tell us what your latest passions are on visible learning. What have you been talking to people about? What have people been picking your mind and just wanting to know from you? Have you learned? I'm sure you are learning new things because that's just the nature of the beast of who you are.
Yeah, look, I've actually got 6 months study leave from my university at the moment, and that's a dangerous time because it gives me the chance to write more and to go and see visible learning in action. So I've got a whole lot of things going on at the moment because my aim is to keep doing that research side. It's a luxury, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm just finishing actually a book with my son on visible learning for parents, and that's been fun. I'm in the process of finishing a book with a Danish philosopher, which is well out of my comfort zone, looking at reasons for schooling and purposes of schooling. And I've got a few other activities going on, but it's also a chance, as I said, to go into schools and see the whole thing in action. And that's really quite inspiring when you see people making the kind of differences that I'm sure you and I want to see. And when it happens, it's magic.
What have you seen?
Well, it's just what keeps me going is listening to the actual students from 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds actually talking about learning and talking about their struggles, talking about the fun and the difficulty of the learning. Whereas so often when you go into schools, all you see is the teacher doing that. And so when you see the kids doing that too, it's really quite exciting.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. It's when you do see the students and they're able to reflect and share that is what's really incredibly powerful. So I have so many questions for you. I don't even know where to start today. But can we start? You recently revised your list of impacts in the classroom. And was there anything that was like a shock or surprise when you were revising that?
Look, yeah, I'm constantly updating it. I'm up to just over 1,600 meta-analyses now, so double the number from the 2009 book. And the reason I do that is for the reason you said. I want to be shocked and surprised. I want to be the first person, if there is a shock, to get up and say, hey, there's a new way of looking at this. Or even more scary, I might have been wrong. So far, no, there has not been something that's really shocked and surprised me. Everything that's been added to it is very consistent with the story that I told 10 years ago. Like this new meta-analysis, like surprise, surprise, the effect size of performance pay on student learning is 0.04, tiny. And so many cases, more meta-analyses come out on bullying, which is negative. But the ones that interest me the most at the moment, the work we've been doing over the last 5 years in the science of learning on the strategies that students learn. And that's really coming up very, very powerful about teaching kids how to go about this process. And kids who have 2 or 3 strategies in learning are so much more advantaged than most who only have 1. And that's really fun.
Can you give us an example of like what you mean by that?
Well, for example, teaching the students to explain what they know to other students or the teacher has a really high effect size. Teaching them to self-verbalize and to self-question and self-explanations. But the most important thing is teaching them to know which strategy to use at what time. Like if you're learning lots of facts or you're trying to consolidate the facts, then deliberate practice and memorization are very powerful. Things like problem-based learning and discovery learning are hopeless. But when you go on to look at the deep side of things and relate ideas, that's when the opposite happens. And so that notion of being strategic about when is pretty powerful. And unfortunately, a lot of kids don't. They use a strategy. When it doesn't work, they use it again. And it doesn't work. And then they have all these beliefs about themselves that they're not good learners.
How much of that is developmental?
No, I don't think so. Developmental in the sense that some kids learn very quickly a strategy and then they keep to it.
Child development, like that they're concrete thinkers when they're younger and more abstract and can actually think about that. They can metacognate a little bit more easily, perhaps. I'm just asking the question. I'm not saying that it is. I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, I think you're right in the sense that that metacognition, that ability to stand back and see how you think, that certainly 4 and 5 year olds can do that, but it really does start to catch on around the ages of 19, 11, 12. In fact, an article we wrote last year looked at the brain development between 0 and 20 and related it to the strategies. And wow, Mr. Piaget was so right in so many ways.
That's what I feel like. I keep seeing research and information and things shared, and it points back to him, like what he was saying all along, and which is a really amazing thing that he was able to be that far ahead in.
And on a sample size of 2 or 3 kids, that's all he had.
Wow.
All right. So, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, so let's get into the feedback aspect, because I know that's something that you recently released a book on, and visible learning and feedback, and what does that look like? And I know it gets into the feedback between teacher and student back to teacher, like all kinds of different directions that feedback's going, that you would hope it's going in a classroom.
Well, the fascinating thing with feedback is that it's one of the more powerful influences, but it's also one of the most variable. Like a third of feedback is a negative impact. And the reason that I struggled and spent probably 10, 15 years before we even sat down to write that book was that's the problem to solve. It's not, is feedback powerful or not? Because the answer is an emphatic yes. But why is it so variable? Why the same feedback with one kid doesn't work with the other? The same key feedback that works with you today doesn't work tomorrow. And that's what we tried to deal with in that book.
Wow.
And so, can you give us maybe a nugget or two from the book of what the some of the discoveries were?
Yeah, I think the big issue that I certainly made the mistake on in my own career was looking about the nature of the feedback that teachers were giving. And then every time you go into a classroom and do a research on it, you're kind of overwhelmed with the amount of feedback that's actually given. And then you think, well, why are we worried about how much feedback we give? I have to confess, guys, it took me a long time for this epiphany to drop on me. And it was only when we started asking how much and the nature of the feedback the student received that we realized, there's the issue. Kids receive 3 to 5 seconds a day. And they're kind of like us as adults. Like, I am the world's best selective listener. I know that if I listen too carefully, I have to redo things. I have to do it again. It wasn't good enough. So sometimes not hearing is a very good skill. Kids are the same. And so, like, we know, for example, that when the teacher gives feedback to the whole class, every kid knows it's not about them. So the first thing is to focus on the feedback received. I think the second nugget I'd give you is the notion of what feedback means from that perspective. Like when you ask teachers, what do they mean by feedback? They say things like, it's comments, it's criticisms, it's where you're going next, it's sort of how you're going, your progress, what you did right, what you did wrong, etc. But when you ask students, they say none of that. They say feedback helps me to know where to go next. And in fact, you can sit there with a kid with 2 pages of your beautifully written out comments that you spent all Sunday afternoon doing and say to the kid, what did you understand by the feedback? And the kid will say, I didn't get any. If there's no where to next feedback, they think there's no information, there's nowhere to go. Now, of course, basing that where to next feedback on all the comments and the criticisms is more powerful. But it's kind of like you and me, is that if we're not getting ways to improve, many of the times we say, well, that was praise. That told me that I was good or bad. It didn't help me where to next. And a lot of assignment work, a lot of assessment work in schools, the information goes nowhere because there is nowhere to next.
Wow.
So to me, one of the most powerful examples of feedback in a kid's life are video games.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they know the game. They know your prior achievement, your last score. They know the success criteria. Set the level, not too hard, not too boring.
Right.
They also then give an incredible amount of opportunity for deliberate practice, lots of feedback, lots of cues. But then they don't do what a lot of teachers do. When you get to the next level or when you finish the end of the day, they don't say, good work, well done, go out and play. They raise it. And kids keep wanting to play this game called learning. It's a continual struggle. It's a continual issue of trial and error, of making mistakes, of learning, of getting cues. Absolutely, they've got it right.
Yeah. So how can we bring that into the classroom?
Well, that's what we're trying to do in visible learning. Teach the teachers about the success criteria. And like one of the arguments we make in the book is a bit of a confession in that after all the years we've been trying to do success criteria, no matter how well we do them, the students still see them too often as low-level content fact-related ones. So we're suggesting in the new book that we have 2 success criteria for each task, one about the content and one about how you relate the content. So making that clear and making that appropriately challenging, the Goldilocks principle, not too hard, not too easy. Same with computer games. The second is teach kids how to deliberately practice. I don't think we do that very well. How do you seek feedback? How do you do your personal best? How do you get progress to the next levels? That's not often what we see in classrooms enough. Too often it's do the task when you're finished. If it's long, neatly written and handed in on time, you've done a good job. That's not a challenge for many kids.
No, that's like low-level clerical work. Dr. Hattie is okay. So here I am. I'm classroom teacher, which I am. I teach a 4th, 5th combination class in Southern California, and I'm given the content that I have to deliver, and it doesn't necessarily fit the model that you're talking about. Do I take the risk to step away from that and mold it, which I personally do? I don't really care. I want to do what's best for kids. But does a lot of teachers that are out there are stuck in this kind of like, I need to follow what I'm told. And so how do they take what you're saying and actually break out of this kind of cell that they're locked into, or this step and ladder, or this pacing guide, or whatever it might be, to put some of these things into their classroom?
That's a great question.
Look, the best book title in the history of education, Neil Postman of the 1960s, Teaching is a Subversive Activity.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is subversive, and there are many great teachers who do that. But I want to be more specific there, because when you look at the common assessments, particularly the statewide assessments, despite all our psychometricians telling you how brilliant they are at keeping deep learning, when you ask what skills does a kid need to do to successfully pass them, 90+% of the questions we ask kids are about the facts. And so that's a real downer. And then when you take your comment about teachers who then think that their job is to help kids get through those tests, get through those assignments, of course they're going to emphasize the facts and the content. And I'm sure, like you, I'd be bored to tears with that, even though, here's the dilemma, guys, kids above average actually prefer, quite often, teachers just to deal with the facts. And so we got a bit of a conspiracy out there. So this is why teachers have to be subversive. It comes back to me very much. What are the nature of the tasks and assignments we give kids? And that's why we're saying, like, we didn't quite go this far in the book, but it's certainly my belief system. Not only do you have 2 success criteria, one about the content, one about the relating the ideas, but I have 2 assessment points. And I tell the students, this is the content and knowledge I want you to know. This is how I want you to relate it and extend it. And that's the way it makes a difference. But if all your work is about the content, oh, wow, no wonder our kids are turned off. Many of our kids are turned off, and some of them love it. And unfortunately, it's not always in their best interest to love it.
Not only the kids love it, the parents love it, because it's a sense of pride when their child succeeds in a model like that, right?
Oh, so true. And there are skills in succeeding in that model, but you're right. They're the compliance skills. And as we know, many of those kids, as they get older and there are more opportunities, then they start to fail because they haven't learned how to fail.
So the thing that I was dying to hear from you when we talk to you. And actually, I didn't realize that I had hit on something here. You're actually writing a book or written a book on the topic. So I would like to change gears just slightly here and pick your brain on this question, which has been driving me crazy lately. So we've got the internet, we've got YouTube, we've got all these ways that kids can learn. Why do we have school? What's the purpose of school?
Yeah, well, one of the fascinations is when people often talk about the future of education, more often than not, it doesn't involve the schools as we know it. But here's the problem, guys. In our society, yours and mine, we expect now both parents to go out and work. We can't have them sitting in front of computer terminals in the home. There is a babysitting role. Now, that's the negative side of it. But let me do the positive side. I take a very strong line that the purpose of schooling is to give kids that they wouldn't get if they didn't go to school.
Mm.
And therein lies the major reason. Like all this nonsense about student control over learning, like we don't have control over our learning. We want kids to be great learners and great teachers, but more often than not, it's what we don't know that we need to find out as by going to school. Like most of us would never do the stuff that school does. Now, some would say that's good, some would say, well, that's bad. But really, there is a lot of things that school teaches us that we wouldn't get if we didn't go there. And there's some famous books out at the moment of young kids who never went to school. Now, the rare exception comes out of that. But most of them, they end up with what they know, and that's it. And that's not good enough. What you don't know is why you go to school.
Great answer.
It's to me, I mean, again, you just, whenever you're saying something, it just strikes me and my brain starts going crazy in different directions of thoughts. So we have a lot of things that aren't happening at home that kids aren't learning on their own because they are, maybe stuck inside or they're stuck in childcare or whatever it might be that they would experience. And I don't know, Tim, if you're feeling this pressure too, but to not only teach what we're supposed to be teaching at school or beyond or whatever it is, but also to be parenting and the expectations with two parents parenting, like you were talking about, or single parents that don't have that time to put into their child. That fits kind of what you're saying, though, almost, Dr. Hattie, that we should be teaching them something that they might not be learning at home, which might be character and values and ways to interact with each other almost that you might have gotten in past generations.
Well, yeah, but the other argument is that in your country and mine, by law, it's compulsory to go to school. And the premise there is that the educators can do it better than the parents. Now, we mightn't like that idea, but it better be true. And in many cases, it is true.
Tim?
It's spinning with so many thoughts here. Wow.
I'd love to go back to that feedback book, Dr. Hattie, just have you share a little bit about what, like, if I'm working with a student in class, what feedback should I expect from them that I might get about my teaching and how I'm guiding them in that learning process?
Well, best thing to do is to shut up and listen to them and invite them, like getting them to think aloud. Oh my gosh, that's hard. It's hard for us as adults. Like we as adults struggle with the language of learning. Like, let me ask you, Tim or Scott, how do you learn?
Very slowly. I have to reflect and process through. It takes me a while to process through when I get new content to really like plug it into where it's necessarily advantageous in my life.
Yeah.
But how do you process and reflect?
Well, I think that I need some sort of stimulating input. First of all, I need something that's going to be not seemingly mundane to me, something that I'm interested in. And then I need to be put in a situation where I have to apply it.
Yeah, but my friend, that means you're going to play video games. What about something that's not of great interest for you that I'm saying to you as your teacher that you need to know so that you could better understand why it's interesting?
One of the other things that I think is important for me is to find somebody that has that passion that I may not see and may not have ever considered, a different perspective.
See, my point here is we as adults struggle with a language of learning.
100%.
Yeah. And so how do we get kids? How do we teach them to talk about what they know, what they don't know, what they're struggling with, where they're having misconceptions, misunderstandings. And that requires building an incredible amount of trust, not only between you and the students, but between the students, because they can be quite nasty to each other when someone doesn't know. And creating opportunities where kids can go and do exactly what you said, seek out that help, seek out that feedback, seek out that work from teachers. Unfortunately, by age 8, many kids who are not so good at school learn their place in the hierarchy of the school achievement system and learn to shut up. And that's exactly what we don't need to do. So I think there's a lot we can do to teach the language of learning, to get kids to learn from each other at the right time about their own explanations. And it's like we were talking about before. At some point, the ultimate test is when a kid can teach another kid. Wow, is that pretty impressive?
It is, yeah. I know that
one of my mantras in the whole visible learning is our job is to teach kids to become their own teacher. And the irony is at age 5, they're pretty good at it. By age 8, they think it's your job.
Oh, yeah. I've noticed that the older the kids that I work with, I had an opportunity to work with some college students a little while back, the more they have learned to play the game of school and pleasing the teacher. And it's like just becomes impossible to get them to think for themselves and to produce anything that's theirs. All they want to do is look at you and say, what do you want me to say? I'll go ahead and say it. Give me, let me go and let me be done because I said what you wanted me to say.
And that follows right through to certain kinds of universities privilege that as well. But hey, guys, let's not get too negative here. There's some stunning exceptions out there where that's not the case, where they do go into the pit of learning and they get dirty and they wallow around and they're not knowing. And that's what keeps me going is when you see that happening. And my view is that there's a fair percentage, if not a majority, of teachers who love to wallow in that pit of learning and aren't they compliance seekers. I think the problem is that, in the sense you're right, some of our students and some of their parents want that particular kind of learning because that's what they had. And I think that's wherein lies the problem because we're not serving those kids in our today's world.
Yeah, that's for sure. So Scott brought up pacing guides. Can you comment on pacing guides? What's your research say on those?
Well, I have no troubles with those. It's like practice testing is quite a high effect size. The pacing guides are there. The thing that bothers me is that too often we assume that every kid is paced the same way and goes through the same learning progression. And that's absolutely not the case. And sometimes we leave kids off because they don't fit to our particular notion of pacing or progression.
Yeah.
That's how I feel too. All right. Well, Scott, you got any more? Or are we ready to switch gears here?
I'm ready to switch gears. I'm not ready to stop talking with Dr. Hattie. But
okay. All righty. So, Professor Hattie, you are working at the University of Melbourne in Australia. You've been there since March 2011. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I'm doing a little stalking here. So today we're going to see how much you know about that little town of yours, Melbourne.
Oh, this is the fun part of the show.
So we're going to call our game, our little game that we're playing here with you today, a tip of our Hatties to Melbourne.
Right.
I'm not wearing a hat. Scott, why don't you tell our audience who Professor Hattie will be competing for today?
Professor Hattie, you'll be competing for Kelly Miller, a 4th grade teacher in Southern California. If you're able to answer 2 out of 3 questions correctly, Kelly will be awarded a free download of an album by the ridiculously popular edge rock band, Rockin' the Standards.
All right, so here we go with your first question about Melbourne. Number 1, a scene from the blockbuster movie Mad Max was filmed on your campus. Which location was used for this film? Was it A?
The Sunken Garden.
Was it B?
Boulevard Drive.
Or was it C?
The Underground Car Park.
I park my car every day in the Mad Max spot, the Underground Car Park, and it's a stunning place.
Oh, you have to park your car there.
Kelly, I've got one for you. That's a daily occurrence for me.
Oh, right. That was an easy one. You are right. Yes, the Underground Car Park. And for our listeners, you got to Google that and see how cool looking it is there. That'd be a fun place to park. Okay, number 2. Melbourne is home to a very odd sculpture. This outdoor artwork depicts which of the following stuck in a tree? Is it A?
A couch.
Or B?
A cow.
Or C?
A car.
Ooh, I don't know that one. So, Kelly, I'm going to have to guess on that one.
It's either a cow or a car.
I'll go with the car because we're a sheep country, not a cow country.
Well, actually, it's a cow on that one.
Oh, moo.
Upside down tree.
All right.
Yeah, very odd.
You better fact check us on these.
I will be looking that up.
I saw pictures of it. All right. Another odd piece of artwork located in Melbourne looks like a giant pile of red pickup sticks jammed into the sidewalk. The Federation Square sculpture is entitled the Red Center Sculpture. How much did the Red Center sculpture cost to make? Is it A?
$100,000.
Is it B?
Did it cost dollars, Tim? $500,000.
Or is it C?
$1 million.
Well, I've certainly seen the sculpture.
Okay.
It's quite big. But we're cheap with art, so I'm going to go with 100,000.
Oh, I'm glad you went with 100,000.
Woo!
That is correct.
Oh, great. There you go, Kelly.
Yeah, you are right on that one. All right, Scott, so how did Dr. Hattie do today?
Good job, Dr. Hattie. You got 2 out of 3 correct. That's good enough to be a winner.
Woo!
Oh, great. Can I also send Kelly a copy of the Visible Learning for Feedback book?
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear that? Kelly, congratulations. You just not only got an amazing album, but you just got an incredible book coming your way from Dr. John Hattie. That is awesome. Congratulations, Kelly.
There you go. Woo! Thank you. That's very nice of you. All right. So why don't you let our listeners know how they can connect with you and learn from you more? We know that you have books. They can just look you up on Amazon and you got lots of resources there. But are you on Twitter? Is there a website that they can go to?
I do have a Twitter account. I have 14,000 followers, but I've never tweeted.
That's kind of me.
There is a website that Corwin, who are the world distributors of my work, have. And so I suggest you go there, and that's a good place to do it. But I'm only an email away, and I'm always happy to talk to people.
All right. And you can find his email by just going to the university website, I'm assuming, for the University of Melbourne. Yeah.
Yes.
Reach out.
And that is so true. Like, one of the good guys out there in education. We are so thankful to have you on the show again for a 3rd time. You had to put up with us and our awestruck, thoughtless confusion and wanting to just desire and just take in everything you have to say. So thank you so much, Dr. John Hattie.
Thanks, Tim and Scott. Enjoyed that.
All righty. And just a reminder for our listeners, make sure you connect with us and give us a review if you like the show. If you don't like the show, then just keep it to yourself. Right, Scott?
That's right.
And yeah, give us some stars there, some love on iTunes. That's how we get the word out. It's not by the number of listens that brings you up on the charts, but by how many reviews you have. So we'd appreciate any kind of reviews that you take the time to write. And don't forget to go to globalschoolplayday.com and sign up for Global School Playday and get involved in that grassroots movement where kids learn to play and get some character. Right, Scotty?
That's right. We're really excited for this next upcoming 5th year of it. And we're already seeing kids from all over the world having their teachers sign them up to say, hey, we believe in this. This should be a part of every kid's life. And you learn a great deal from that, from empathy to problem solving to creativity, imagination to collaboration to communicate. We can go on forever, right, Tim?
Amen to that. So thank you again for being on the show, Professor Hattie, and we look forward to our next visit. And thank you for watching and listening, everybody. But most of all, thanks for listening.
Mom and Dad.
Yeah.